everybody. How's everybody doing this morning? Good?
We love your crowd.
Thank you. All right, so I am introducing now Cecil O'Dell, our next speaker, who is the president of FISH, one of my favorite acronyms of groups, which is Freethinking, Inquiring, Secular Humanists. Is that correct?
That is correct.
At West Virginia University. He's going to be talking about humanitarianism. How about it?
All right. First, I'd like to give a big thank you for everyone coming out today. This is my first year attending the Secular Student Alliance Conference, so I'm pretty happy to be here speaking with you today. Pretty humbled. So today I'm going to be talking about, as you might have noticed if you can read, and I hope you all can, humanitarianism from a secular perspective. And so the title alone, some people have asked me, why humanitarianism from a secular perspective? Why didn't you just say humanism? I want to differentiate between the two for a little bit. I like to think of humanitarianism as an array of more concrete goals that you can accomplish in your community in terms of volunteer and community service, more immediate things that you should consider and that you should work on. Whereas humanism is a secular avocation of ideals, philosophical ideals such as ethics, reason, science, all that great stuff. So, moving on, and typically what I like to do with presentations is I like to look at the data first, because it's typically the most logical way to do it. At least that's how I've always felt. Maybe you feel the same way. But before I jump into the data, I want to leave you with some potentially brain-racking questions throughout today's that you can think about throughout today's presentation. And believe me, if I don't see a large majority of you looking like that at some point during the presentation, I will know that I failed utterly. Okay, so first, where do secular individuals stack up in the United States when it comes to volunteering and community service? Why are humanitarian efforts important? What can we gain from volunteering personally and as organizations? How can we do a better job of being humanitarian? So, now looking at the data, for whom are we volunteering? What kind of organizations? So, first, and the highest at 33.1%, religious organizations. So this is compiled from the Bureau of Labor. 2012, 33.1% of volunteers volunteered primarily with religious organizations. 25.5% volunteered with education/youth service, and only 14.2% volunteered primarily with non-sectarian community service organizations. And then the other is just a massive conglomerate of, any categories, but these are the top three for 2012. So we can see that the religious organizations they more than double the number of community service organizations. And one good thing to point out is that the religious organizations do a diverse amount of activities that would fall under these other categories, but since it's a breakdown by, the category of the organization, that's the important part of that. So, moving on, let's look at by age. So, if we take a look at our fancy bar chart here, we will see that we have a massive drop from 65 years and up to the age range of 16 years through 24 years for the percentage of people that were involved in the last graph of people that volunteered primarily with religious organizations. So we see a drop for the 65 and up age range at 46.5%, that's their percentage, to the 16 through 24 year percentage, which is 26.5, which is a 20% drop. So we're actually seeing a great increase in the amount of secular volunteering and community service that's going on. So I think the Secular Student Alliance recently has been a really big part of that. And actually, with these statistics, in 2012, with the 16 through 24 year old age group, it was the first time that the number one category that volunteers worked with was not religious. It was 1% more community service. So at least that's one positive thing to look forward to. Now, moving on, I'm a guy who's really big into philosophy, so I want to take a moment and just talk about I want to talk about the Republic and why it's important to what I'm talking about today. If you've read the Republic or have a vague understanding of it, or if not, that's fine. I'm not going to go into depth with it. I just want to say that if you've read it, then you'll know that Socrates, Plato's mentor, and the works of which he transcribed into the Republic and then added on his own work. Socrates, at the very beginning, is trying to comprehend a definition and understanding of justice. And by doing so, he's talking to various individuals who have very strong feelings as to what justice is and as to how we can comprehend or understand justice. But one man comes along throughout a very long series of arguments by the name of Glaucon. And Glaucon comes in with a right hook. No, that's not actually what happened. But Glaucon comes in and says to Socrates, "Hey, I've been listening to everything that you said so far, and I like your train of thought, but I want to make sure that where we are in our discussion has the greatest chance, has the best percentage of being right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play devil's advocate, and I'm going to look at what you've talked about critically. Even though I personally support everything you've said, it's because I want it to be right is why I'm looking at it so critically, and why I'm trying to find weaknesses and flaws. I'm trying to pick it apart. I'm trying to see where does your belief system, where does your explanations, where do they collapse, where do they break down? And I think we should all try to be like Glaucon in that sense. We should examine everything, not just with science and philosophy, but we should examine everything with our organization. We should not be afraid to ask those questions. What are we doing wrong? Is this going to have some negative consequences that we haven't considered? And I guess ultimately there's a fine line between playing devil's advocate and just being a jerk about it. But ultimately, even if you do your best, some people will take you for a jerk, which is why Socrates popularized the famous label of our next slide.
Did he know?
As some of you might not have known, Socrates was a writer for SNL. I guess we don't have too many SNL fans here, but that's okay. I knew I should put in that cricket MP3, but thank you. But okay, so let's go ahead and assume a role as Glaucon to begin analyzing the data that we talked about. So first, one that I've already gotten, Cecil, why does it matter that religious groups are doing the most volunteering? I mean, they're doing good in the community. They're helping a lot of people out, so why does it even matter? Oh yeah, that's true. They are helping a lot of people, and I'm not here to say, let's take that percentage and drive it down to 0. No, that's not what I'm here to say. I'm saying that there are a lot of negative consequences that may not even come to face value at first, just from having such a wide majority of people go for the religious organizations. I mean, first, it furthers social stigmas, and the big one is that religious people are the only ones that do good, and I believe we've touched on that 3 or 4 times throughout the conference already. And that's a stigma that is just nailed deep within the general population. It's that, if I didn't have my religion, I would not be able to do good. I cannot be good without God. How do you? That's the number one question. I mean, by show of hands, has anyone in this room gotten the question, where do you get your morals from, or how can you be good? The vast majority of you. So, and a big part of it is that all these local churches and all these religious organizations are massing together and are the socially dominant force, but I'm here to try to encourage everyone and try to get everyone inspired, because we are making a change for that movement, which I believe will eventually eradicate these social stigmas. But the most important reason of all why it matters that the majority of religious groups are doing the most volunteering is that we as a society need to get people to understand that they should want to do good for its own sake. They shouldn't want to do good because they feel that they've been religiously motivated, cleansed of their sins, or any other secondary reason. They should see that helping others is something that should be done for its own intrinsic good reasons. And people are social creatures. People will mimic others. So if you get that trend going of, hey, I'm doing this just because I want to help out, not because my demographics associate with this one particular cause. I don't have anybody in my family that has died of a particular disease, or this doesn't affect my sexual orientation or my race. I'm just here because I want to do good. And we see the majority of people that volunteer for these different causes have personal reasons or are subjected to some sort of social atmosphere where it's like, hey, all my friends are doing this, so let's go out and do that. And as much as some of us might not want to admit that, that also applies to us, because if we have a lot of our peers doing it, it's going to seem a little bit more natural for us to do it as well. Moving on, next question. Well, Cecil, everything you said is great, and I agree with all of it, but how does this help me, or how does it help my organization? I mean, I have to ask that question because we're college students. We have limited time. Regardless of your opinions, your demographics, or your state of mind, ultimately we live on one planet. We're one people. And as Einstein eloquently put, a human being is part of the whole called by us universe. A part limited in time and space, he experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of a prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. And I believe this extends far beyond consciousness. I mean, we're physically sharing the same air, drinking the same water. I mean, it's really easy to feel, tough, independent, that you don't really need anyone else. Believe me, I've been there. Pride is a pretty easy thing to, be succumbed by. But we have to remember that we are dependent on others unequivocally. We are dependent on our environment and a wide array of factors that not only allow us to live, but they allow us to live happily. And the quality of how we let that go on affects us personally. And I will get on to how that affects our organization in a little bit, but I also want to say, in short, the negative actions by others and the lack of good ultimately affects each and every one of us and the quality of our movement. And naturally, we as secular students have the opportunity to be stimulated from these social stigmas and from this intolerance to get out there and to promote ethics, reason, science, and the betterment of society that I would personally like to see define every single person in this room. So, as for the question, how can it help my organization? Well, one key area is it can help you identify who your core members are. So if you pick a time or if you pick a place where you're going to do some community service, the people that you have show up or the people that you have contact you are usually going to be the people that are going to be your more dedicated members over time. And that can help you sort of see which members of the group are really committed and which ones are not. Public relations, getting the word out about your organization, working with various volunteering groups. I mean, getting out there, doing activities, talking to people is just another small aspect of PR. And believe me, as the president of a secular student organization, I know that we all need as much PR as we can. social stigmas, that's the biggest thing. Well, that's one of the big things because, for example, during my time as president at WVU, I worked with some community service organizations that did have religious undertones. Habitat for Humanity was one of them. And opening that discussion with their members, most of which were liberal, more leaning liberal, but religious on, why are you here? Why is a secular organization helping out? Beginning that conversation, talking to people, saying that, hey, I'm here because I want to make a positive impact on society, and I want to drive a movement forward where we're not going to stop at tolerating people. We're going to move forward until each and every person can live a happy life and can be accepted by all their peers. Well, that might be an impossible goal, but it's something that we have to strive for, and we have to be on top of. Another thing, organization alliances. It's very important to reach out to other organizations to find that overlap in members, to find mutual things that you can do community service and volunteering on, because a lot of new organizations do have trouble recruiting members, or aren't starting out as strong, and even the tougher ones really aren't that big as compared to maybe the Young Democrats or some more progressive, bigger student organization. But reaching out with them and combining your abilities and your knowledge can really help your own organization in the sense of directly recruiting members, feeding off of their PR, not to get too parasitic about it, but also mutually working on opportunities, and just trying to get the name of your organization out there and trying to build the reputation of your organization. Because, for instance, if you work on it enough, maybe you could look for opportunities within your student government. Maybe you could look for scholarships, community service scholarships. Can you imagine the impact if you could get a statewide newspaper or local TV station to cover the fact that your secular organization won a community service scholarship out of 30, 40, however many religious organizations that are at your school? That would be amazing, and I hope to see a lot of you go out and make that happen, because that would send ripples down the community of the state and the society in which we live. And another thing is it increases flexibility. So for instance, you have a general member. If you have some of your members that are interested in one particular area of volunteering or have experience or expertise, you can let them run with that project, and you can let them sort of develop it on their own. That's a very easy, general project that doesn't have much risk. And the last thing is just building up your resume as an organization. Your volunteering efforts are perhaps one of the most important things that you can have on your resume. And how can we do better? We can, like I said, make use of alliances. Try to go out, try to find, maybe if your university has a volunteering week, maybe if there's a social justice or community service alliance organization, go sit down at the meetings, go become a part of it. Ask, what can I do to help? Where can you make use of my members? Where can we help out? Schedule large events. Try to get a lot of publicity out of them, and try to schedule some things that might be meaningful or might deal with the homeless, because those would also make really great pieces of journalism. So I guess to wrap this up, I want to challenge each and every one of you to look out into your own universities and to look out for opportunities and different ways that you can keep moving the motivations that people have towards, why should I do good things, or why should I help out my community from a secular perspective. Thank you.